had a few questions during the session, and I guess I'll start firstly with one. What is the best way to get into local government?
Well, the best way is, and the most appealing thing about local government is that it is fairly flexible and it's fairly accessible. In the presentation you would have heard Roberta talk about the fact that there's a local government area covering most of Australia. It covers a whole lot of career opportunities. It provides promotional opportunities. So I suppose the best way to get into it is to think about what sort of career you'd like to have, and then progressing it through local government would be a wonderful way to do that. So I suppose it's a matter of thinking about where your interests lie, and thinking about the opportunities local government would offer to use your professional interests and your professional background in a civic environment that was going to improve the quality of life for citizens in our country. So it would be, it's actually fairly easy to get into it, and it would be a matter, I think, of finding out where you'd like to live, what sort of job you'd like to do, and then looking for the opportunities there.
I guess building on that, one of the other questions we received is there a place for environmental experts or scientists in local government?
Most definitely. Not all councils would have the luxury of being able to employ environmental scientists, but increasingly over the last, I suppose, over the last decade or more, environmental values have improved, have increased, and both in the community and therefore in the and that's been translated into local government, where local government is now required under some pieces of legislation across the country to weigh up environmental considerations when making decisions, and obviously local councils need the expertise to be able to advise them on what are the right decisions to make, and therefore some councils do employ environmental scientists. The council where I live in an area of Sydney which is surrounded by waterways and beaches and national parks, and the residents and citizens have a very high importance about the environmental value of their area. And so for the past 20 years or so, my local council's had a dedicated environmental science unit to advise the council on its decision making. And that science unit has survived through many iterations of the council and continues to survive to this day because the advice that it provides to the council is very much valued.
Thanks, Melissa. One of the questions that we had from a couple of our attendees today was about migrant jobs in local government, and perhaps any advice you have for migrants seeking work in local government to sort of apply for those jobs.
Well, I think you'll see from the presentation that Roberta gave, our data shows that local government could do a lot better in terms of employing people with culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. So a lot of councils would be thinking about ways to improve the participation of migrants in the workforce within their local area. How you'd go about doing that, I think it would depend on the sorts of skills that the employer has, or the potential employee has, and finding a match with the council that would use those skills. So local government tends not to have particular targets. Not all some councils would have some targets, but generally speaking, we find that a lot of councils don't have targets for culturally and linguistically diverse employees. However, a lot of councils are very keen to reflect the makeup of their local communities, both within the workplace and within the council group. So would be keen to make sure that there's equal participation of women, that the makeup of the workforce and the councillors generally reflects the makeup of the local community. So I'm aware that there's a number of councils with large migrant communities that have some wonderful programs to promote the participation of people from different cultures. I won't name them because I'm sure to leave one out, but local government has a pretty strong track record of not only providing services and events and cultural activities, which of course are very important, but other sorts of programs that respond specifically to the needs of their migrant communities.
Thanks, Melissa. And I was just wondering, we've got a lot of graduates registered for these virtual careers fairs. Wondering what the graduate opportunities in local government are.
There are many. What areas in particular are we talking about, or don't you have that data?
Look, I don't have that data, but just broadly, I suppose, are there sort of graduate intakes within local government across various sectors of employment?
There are some, but we could be doing better in that respect as well. In a lot of cases, the council would expect to employ somebody who had the skills and the experience necessary for the job. However, in an area where there's school shortages, there would be graduate opportunities for people in those areas and in those locations.
Thanks, Melissa. And finally, one more question we received from the audience. How secure are local government jobs?
Fairly secure compared to a lot of other industries. Local government, generally speaking, has a solid income base through its rating system. There are, and I'm talking very generally, of course, because there's a cohort of local governments in the country that are reliant on government grants to provide services, and they're in areas, usually in the north of Australia, which have limited opportunities for rates and charges. But generally speaking, local government has a very solid revenue base. The sort of work that's involved is going to be involved, or has been required for generations and in fact centuries, and so it's highly likely that that will continue. Obviously, the types and the nature of the jobs are going to be very different, and local government, like any other employer, needs to be thinking about the jobs of the future. But generally speaking, it's a stable employer. It's an employer that offers a lot of opportunities for flexible working hours and flexible arrangements, study leave, those sorts of opportunities. And it's also a workforce that's quite transportable. Most people in local government move around from council to council to gain their experience. They might start in a small council, move to a larger council, maybe go back to a smaller council but in a higher position. So there is definitely a career path of opportunities there. And it also offers opportunities for people who are interested in travel and moving about to move around into different types of council.
Actually, just on that, Melissa, we've actually had a question just come in about someone who said they'd be willing to move to both urban and rural councils. But what would be your advice in getting a position in council? Particularly, this particular question was about pathways into an environment role.
Yeah, well, I think in that case it would be a matter of looking around or having some chats with a few people in the know about which areas those particular skills would be of most value and would be most valued by the council, and then either making inquiries, waiting for an opportunity to come up, ringing the section involved and seeing what opportunities are around. I think that would be the best approach. I think I made it clear that opportunities in environmental science are certainly there, but it's not really widespread. I talked about that cohort of councils that have very low revenue raising opportunities. They would typically not have the luxury of being able to employ a specialist skill such as an environmental scientist, but there would be other larger councils, particularly in areas where there's a high environmental value placed on the area by the local community and by the local council, that very well might employ environmental scientists.
Many thanks for your time, Melissa, and also to Roberta for her presentation. To all our attendees, we hope we addressed all your questions and look forward to seeing you back for future webinars. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.